Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development Program, and in particular, the AWD 1111 .NET Framework with Web Databases class, I am doing a series of video presentations from the textbook that will be used for the AWD 1111 class in the fall 2019 semester, that being Pro ASP.NET MVC 5 and A-Press Text by Adam Freeman. So far, working our way through here, and I've done one lecture on Chapter 1, about 9 lectures on Chapter 2, and 3 lectures on Chapter 3. In addition, I did a lecture on how to uninstall Visual Studio 2017 Community Edition and install Visual Studio 2019 Community Edition. So with that said, let's jump into Chapter 4 on Essential Language Features. One thing to realize, and I believe you all do, is that in the class you took last semester, that being AWD 1100, the fundamentals of C# programming, the idea is that we went over a lot of the features, a lot of the functionality in C#, but by no means was it an all-encompassing, all-inclusive class. All right. So some of the stuff that they'll discuss here, as you look in the summary, we've talked about already. Working with properties, creating an object, all right, adding functionality to a class which cannot be modified. Some of that stuff we've done. We did very quickly look at delegates. All right. Did we use implicit typing? Probably not. Did we create objects without defining a type? No. Did we use link? No. Did we talk about asynchronous methods? No. All right. This will be, I believe, the first chapter in this text where the author, as he says, to demonstrate the language features in this part of the book, I've created a new Visual Studio project called Language Features with the MVC template empty and check the option for the MVC folders. All right. Notice that the author says here that the language features described are not specific to MVC. All right. Says you will have to create an MVC app if you want to follow along with the examples. I need a simple controller to demonstrate the features, so I created a home controller CS file. In the controllers, talks about how he's done that. We've done this already with an empty controller. All right. So let's go ahead and do this. Now, the problem I've been having, and you may or may not have noticed this if you've been kind of watching me certain times in here, is that I'm scheduled to be getting a new computer sometime in the early to mid-July time frame. So about a month from now, 5 weeks from now. But as of right now, I'm working with one that if you look at my C drive, I've got a little over a gig, and I'm using about 460 gig. All right. The problem with this is there's a lot of stuff in here. I'm not sure exactly what it does. Should probably hit this disk cleanup here. It says I can save some. Well, that looks good. In my recycle bin, I've got about 4 gig. So hopefully that's going to clean it up a little bit more than it is right now. The reason I'm telling you this is when I go into the desktop, you'll notice there's not much stuff left there anymore. That's my desktop. All right, and this was the project we did for Chapter 2, and what I'd like to do is to cut that, bring it over here to my 519 folder, and drop it in. Hopefully I can do that. Tried doing it before. Even though I'd closed the program, some remnants were still open, evidently. But now it looks like it's gone. All right. And now that I've started to delete this, I should hopefully have enough disk space to continue on. All right, I'm going to put that down here. And I'm going to create a new project. Again, I've got to go down a ways and find my ASP.NET web application. All right, next. The author, I'm trying to remember now what he called this. Language features. Now I probably could go and save this to someplace other than my desktop, and I'm sure that at least somewhat that would help, but I'm going to leave it there anyway. I'm just going to call this Chapter 04. All right, and click Create. Now it will be an MVC project. And I want MVC, of course, it'll be an empty project. But I want MVC chosen here. And I'll just leave the rest of the defaults as they're set. So it's going to create this. And I believe the next thing I'm supposed to do once we get this is to come in and create a home controller. Let's close that. So we've done this. So I created a home controller.cs file, right mouse click on controllers, add controller, empty. All right, set it to home controller. Okay, that should get us, after we do all this, remember that right now in views, we have only the web config, but after we right mouse click on here and choose add controller, it will be empty, add, and we want to call that home controller. Remember now, after I click Add, that in my views, I will now have a folder, there'll be nothing in it yet, that's called Home. And up here in Controllers, I'll have a home controller.cs file. There it is there, and here it is, and there's my home folder. Okay, so let's get started. So it says this is what we're going to have initially. Well, let's check. All right, the initial contents of the home controller. They want us, or I'm going to, add that using statement, which will be gray, I believe. It's giving me this thing for models, and it's saying that right now there's nothing in there, so it is unnecessary. All right. In fact, then let's do this. We'll comment it out for right now. All right. So in our home controller, we're going to change this from an action result that returns a view to a string that says navigate to a URL to show an example. We should now be able to do a file, save all, and run this. And because of the fact that we're in our home and we've got index, which are our default values that will be in our route config file, this should work. Just going to print a statement on the screen, all right, that says navigate to a URL to show an example. So that should come up here momentarily. There it is. All right, I'm going to close this and jump back into my program. Okay. I will create action methods for each example. So the result from the index action method is a basic message so we can keep the project simple. Okay. It says the home controller class won't compile at the moment because it imports the language features models namespace. That was this. That's why I commented it out. The namespace won't create until I create a models folder, which I do as part of the first example in the next section. Okay. All right. To display the results of my action methods, I right-clicked the index action, selected Add View to create a new view called Result. You can see the contents of the view file in 4.2. It doesn't matter which options you select in Add View because you'll replace the initial content with the markup shown. All right, so we're going to want to create this. So I'm just going to grab this entire thing here, copy it to the clipboard, and this will be called Result. All right. So we're going to right mouse click in here, add a view. They want us to call this Result. All right. Here it comes. And we'll replace everything that's in there with this. It says you can see that this is a strongly typed view where the model type is string. For the most part, the examples that follow are not complex examples, and I can represent the results as a simple string. All right, now, new stuff. Adding the system.net.http assembly. Later on in the chapter, the author will be using an example that relies on the system.net.http assembly, which by default is not added to our MVC projects. So we are to select Add Reference from the Visual Studio Project menu. So in other words, come back here, Project, Add Reference. All right. And these are different things that we can add into our program. Let me explain how I have used this in the past. All right, you'll notice here that there's something that says Microsoft.Visual Basic. All right, C#, which is what we're using here, does not include a simple kind of input method. All right, we've created our own, we've done this before, but there isn't one that's built in. There is one that's built in to Microsoft Visual Basic. So in the past, I have included this reference that you see right here that I've got highlighted so that I'm able to use the Microsoft Visual Basic input method in my C# programs. That's typically why you do something like this. All right. Ensure that the assembly section is selected on the left-hand side and check the system.net.http item as shown here. All right. So, assemblies. They had framework. Okay, and we want system.net.http. As you can see here, it is alphabetized. System.net.http. All right, so I've added it right there. And I guess all we have to do is click OK. All right. And it's been added. So that should be in our list of references now. And there it is, system.net.http. Okay. All right. The next thing that's discussed here is using automatically implemented properties. As always, I want to be cognizant of my time. I'm already at almost 15 minutes. So even though we've only gone through a couple pages in this chapter, I'm going to stop right now. All right. And we will continue on in just a few minutes.